Hey, it's Hunt. You found Hunt on Saints. We're talking black and gold football. Do us a favor. Hit the like button, share your comments below, and hit that subscription button so you can get all of our content. Enjoy. Took a chance this morning and looked over the Saints schedule and checked out the point spreads via ESPN Bet on all the games. And I think it's something you could read too much into because the point spreads are so tight in the NFL that is there a huge difference in the matchup if you're a 2-point dog or a 1-point favorite? No, it just means it's a really tight game. And most of these games are really tight point spreads, but it does illustrate the point that most of us were making when the schedule came out last week. The Saints are underdogs in 4 of their first 5 games. They're favored by 5 against Carolina. Then they're at Dallas where they're a 6-point dog. Philly comes to the Dome. You're a 3-point dog. You go to Atlanta. You're a 4-point dog. You're at Kansas City. You're an 8-point dog. So you're underdogs in 4 of the first 5. That signals it could be a bit of a rocky start, as we noticed when the schedule came out. But you can extrapolate it out a little bit further, and the Saints are dogs in 8 of their first 12. And I just feel like the tenor of this entire organization can hinge on that. Because if you go out there and the chalk falls, which theoretically, likely will not go exactly according to plan like that, but for the sake of the discussion here in May, you start 4-8, like the city's unhappy, the organization is unhappy, and you feel like there are massive changes coming. Like, let's just be real. And that's just the reality of the difficulties of the NFL and where the Saints organization is right now. But you can flip that and understand that if you can get through that and get to your bye week, there are games where you're favored moving forward. You're favored at New York. You're favored against Washington. You're favored against the Raiders. There can be a strong finish to this year if you can just survive the beginning. Now, Atlanta is the only South team that's favored in New Orleans, and that's your competition. And I feel like that's correct, but we don't know. The conversation around Atlanta right now is very similar to the conversation that was around the Saints this time last year. It's a roster you think is pretty good and a brand new quarterback who should elevate things significantly from where you were. Where you were with the Saints was Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton. Where they were last year was Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. And you plugged in Derek Carr, and it didn't get a whole heck of a lot better. And now you're plugging in Kirk Cousins, and we all assume it's going to be better. But do we know that? No. Got a new coach as well. So the division's the most important thing, but you start to look at things. At home, you're favored in 5 of the 8. Carolina, Tampa, Denver, Washington, and the Raiders. You are dogs at home to Philly, Atlanta, Cleveland, and the Rams. And on the road, you're only favored once against the Giants. Your dogs at Dallas, Atlanta, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Green Bay, Tampa. And there's a pick'em on there, which is at Carolina. I would hope the Saints could be a favored at Carolina, but right now, the line's not posted. It's just a pick it. But again, I should point out that looking through this entire schedule, 10 of the games are a field goal or less. Carolina's not, it's 5. Dallas, you're a 6-point dog. At Kansas City, you're an 8-point dog. At Atlanta, it's 4. At Green Bay, it's 5. But most of these lines are within 3 points either way. And like I said, to start things off, like, it's a field goal here and there. Like, that's the nature of this thing. But the Saints are at such a critical juncture, I believe, with their franchise. Mickey Loomis would tell you otherwise, but I don't believe it. Does anybody here think if the Saints start 4-8 and don't right the ship and finish this thing 6-11, that there's not going to be a coaching change in New Orleans? Of course there is. Of course there is. There would be far too great a sample size to react any other way. You would have a tenure in Oakland and a 3-year sample size in New Orleans, and it would not have worked. You would be significantly under 500. And it just feels like if you were the Saints, you'd like to flip this schedule. you'd really rather play Washington, the Giants, the Rams at home, the Raiders at home at the beginning of the schedule to try to build up some positive equity, one in the win column and two with the city. Because don't think we've forgotten about how things felt in the Dome during that Jaguars game last year. Like, we haven't. There are some people that are literally my age who have a hard time going back to remember things worse than that in the Dome. Empty seats, boo birds. That has not been the case in New Orleans for 15 years. If you get to that point in back-to-back years, obviously there's got to be a change made. Mickey Loomis spoke about that at the end of the season, saying we evaluated everything and we evaluate our coach and we think we have a really good coach. Now, he may be the only person in the room that believes that as far as Dennis Allen being a head coach, but perhaps he does. If it starts off bumpy this year, I just don't know if you can get it back. And then you've got to do a different type of reset because you lose a lot of your staff and both sides of the ball, and there's a lot of changes that go with making a head coaching change. So the fact that the Saints are dogs in 4 of their first 5 and 8 of their first 12, you just kind of wish that was reversed a little bit. I'm curious as to what the national folks think about the New Orleans Saints, because the quickest thing to do to assess an organization that you're not covering day to day to day is to just look at what the record says. And the Saints' record says they were an average football team last year. But the fact of the matter is that we all know that schedule was pathetic. If you crank that schedule up two notches, you're probably looking at a 5-win team. That tells a completely different story. So there's just a lot of pressure on everyone in this organization starting right out of the chute. You better beat Carolina. And then you better find a way to get your head above water once or twice at Dallas, 6-point dog, Philly at home, 3-point dog, at Atlanta, 4-point dog, at Kansas City, 8-point dog. Because the relief that comes with Denver and Carolina and the Giants and the Commanders and the Raiders is all in the back end. You could tell right when the schedule came out, and Vegas agrees. You're favored 6 times, you're an underdog 10 times, and one's a pick'em. So if you go by the chalk and you go call it 6-11, well, there are big changes happening in New Orleans. So you're going to have to outperform your expectation, when my belief is that the actual national folks don't know what the Saints really were last year because they were beating up on a bunch of backup quarterbacks. So we'll see. Long way to go. OTAs, summer, training camp. Get out there and play some football. But right now, the Saints are in a spot where they better outperform their expectations, or there are more changes coming in black and gold.
Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.